Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 20 of season 2 of Arrow called The Man Under the Hood. And overall, this is a pretty good episode, but it's another one of the let's move the pieces around the board episodes, just to really kind of get everything up and ready for the season finale, which is barreling right towards us. So let's just like do what we always do, talk about all our characters, and then we'll kind of move on and talk about the basic big plot stuff. And let's sort of start small and work our way up. Not a whole lot to say about Roy this episode. Just it was to me genuinely a surprise that he, of course, turned out to be who they were siphoning the Mirakuru from. Not a lot for Colton Hayes to do on this episode except lie there with his shirt off, which I'm sure a lot of the ladies in the audience liked. They did mention that they captured him at a shelter in Bloodhaven, which I thought was a little strange, given that the people who make the show have basically said that Starling City is somewhere out in California, and given the suspiciously Vancouver-like weather, I'm suspecting Northern California, and Bloodhaven has always been established to be on the East Coast somewhere, heavily suspected to be somewhere in New Jersey, actually. And in fact, if you pay really careful attention to the comics, it's actually to some degree canon that Gotham City is located in New Jersey. There was a comic, I believe it was Shadow of the Bat Annual 1, where you saw a guy from Gotham's driver's license, and it said that that Gotham City flat out was in New Jersey, and it's been established that Bloodhaven is pretty close to Gotham, so. Maybe they're just sort of either Isabel was lying or they're sort of having a little fun with the geography of the DC universe, like on Smallville, where apparently rather than being somewhere on the East Coast, Metropolis was now in Kansas somewhere, which never really. That was one aspect of the show that I understand that they did that for practical reasons, but it just never really struck me as being a very authentic choice, I guess I should say. But anyway, apparently they did mention that Roy had an apartment somewhere, so I guess he stopped living in that crappy house in the Glades. Well, I guess maybe Thea was going to go and stay there, seeing as how it looks like Queen Mansion is going to get shut down. But we'll get back to that later. Let's see. I really think that this episode's title. A lot of people thought with its might be a reference to what was developing some stuff with Roy. Now I think it's actually next episode that's really going to be the big Roy one, seeing as how that's what the trailer for the episode kind of hints at. But anyway, really to me this episode really seems to be about who Oliver is and Laurel's reaction to the news that she was given last time around. Now of course a lot of other stuff happens, but really it is who Oliver Queen, the man, is this episode. And since we brought him up, let's talk about Laurel. And a lot of stuff for Laurel, I like how she just doesn't take Slade at his word, but she kind of goes back and she looks at everything that's going on. It's like how we left her last time. We saw those gears turning in her head, and a lot of stuff was really falling into place. She goes to the hospital and she sees those scars on Sarah's back and learns about her injuries from the doctor. And suddenly the vigilante's masked partner suddenly makes a lot more sense. And again, given what she's learned about Sarah's past, I mean, really, Laurel, how big of a surprise is this? And then there's, Laurel's got to be like, how in the hell did I not recognize my own sister? She was just saying. But it's comics, okay? It's comics. And I like how she, even during that meeting with the Arrow, I was like, ooh, is she really gonna tell Oliver that she knows? And I'm glad that she didn't, because, that saves that revelation for a later day. But I think the real star of this whole thing, in terms of what was going on with Laurel, was that conversation with her dad. And it's very reminiscent, of course, to the speech that Commissioner Gordon gave in the Nolan Batman movies, and that's really not a surprise. I really get the impression that Quentin really does know. I mean, he's figured it out, but he just does not in any way, shape, or form want to acknowledge it, perhaps even to himself. Because if he acknowledges even to himself that Oliver Queen has to be the Arrow and that nothing else makes sense, then whatever he does involving the Arrow, he's not going to be looking at them person as the vigilante. He's going to be looking at him as his daughter's ex-boyfriend, somebody who he thinks is actually a decent guy, someone who he's going to might ask to do dangerous things, knowing that it could potentially cause harm to people that he knows. Now, granted, Quentin doesn't have the greatest relationship with the Queen family, but he's moved on from a lot of that, and he bears no real particular animosity towards Thea, and maybe not even to Moira. It's a little hard to tell. But, again, he would also be sending Oliver into situations, basically, if something bad happens to Oliver, and it's a result of something that Quentin asked the vigilante to do, it's going to hurt both of his daughters. So this is a little bit of a defense mechanism for Quentin, to just sort of reconcile these two worlds that he's from. And these two desires, the desire to be a cop, to follow the law, to do what is expected of him as a policeman. And then there's the desire he has to do what he believes is morally right. And as we've seen, this has been some pretty serious clash between that. And I also like this episode where Laurel once again blackmails Kate Spencer to get her dad out of jail and apparently get him his job back. I mean, I don't really know exactly how that works. I'm very certain that there's much more than the DA says, oh yeah, never mind about him helping that vigilante. Give him his job back. I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. But I like that they at least have Kate Spencer basically say to Laurel, is like, don't think you can play this game with me forever. And seriously, Laurel needs to have this in some way come back and bite her in the butt. Because you can't go around blackmailing a district attorney and just expect them to sit there and take it. Somebody like that, you need to be somebody a lot more badass than Laurel to make them say how high when you say jump. And I'm kind of hoping this is in some way them cultivating, maybe having Kate become Manhunter in the future, but I don't know if that's very likely. I kind of get the impression that the actress playing Kate Spencer is maybe just a little too old to be running around fighting crime in spandex. No offense to her, but that sort of thing is a young person's game. But anyway, I think that kind of covers what's going on with Laurel and Quentin. Not a huge amount to say about what's going on with Sarah this episode. Again, she's just sort of serving as a supporting character this time around. Again, not a lot to say about what's going on with Dig this episode. Felicity, Felicity, as she always does, has a few good moments. And I love how she incorporated some technology stolen from acquired from Clock King, and I like how she even acknowledges that's what people are calling him. It's just fun when they do that. But yeah, again, really nothing huge to say about them. Moira, yeah, let's kind of move on to the Queens and just kind of get them out of the way, and then we'll move on to our let's move on to the guest stars, and then we'll talk about our bad guys. So Moira, again, not a huge amount to say about what's going on with her. Obviously, I think she realizes that Thea doesn't want to talk to her, and that's why despite Thea being mad at Oliver, which again still doesn't really make sense, that Oliver is probably the one who's going to be more able to get through to Thea. And I do like that line. She says, well, I'd better win this election for mayor because we're going to need the money. Now, let's kind of get into what's going on with Thea this episode. And, of course, Oliver has that whole situation where, oh, yeah, I really need to talk to you, and this is extraordinarily important. And, of course, that's when he has to go off and do superhero stuff, and it just completely shoots any chance he had with getting Thea to come around to his point of view all to hell. And again, I'm still not totally on board with Thea taking all of this out on Oliver. all he really did was not tell her something that obviously was going to cause her an immense amount of pain. I mean, look at the speech Thea gives about how she's the daughter of 2 mass murderers. Yeah, I mean, come on, Thea, you have to. Is it really that hard to understand as to why Oliver would not tell you this? And I hate the fact that she hasn't even asked, when did you know this? How long have you known the truth about Malcolm Merlyn being my father? But again, Thea is coming from an emotional place, and people who come from when they're in an emotional state really are really not at doing the best job of ticking things off in logical fashion, and that's just the way things are. But I have a feeling like things are seriously going to start turning around, especially given how the next episode is going to focus on Roy. And it really is interesting to see what's going on, what Thea would be if she didn't really have the Queen family fortune to fall back on. I mean, is the club covered under all of that? I mean, but anyway, that's kind of all I got to say about her. Now, moving on to Oliver himself, and this is again just every time he turns around, just one more punch in the gut. He's having to destroy this research facility that was named after his father. Everything he tries with his sister just blows up in his face. His family is facing complete and utter financial ruin, and Oliver Queen losing all of his money, that's something they've done more than once in the comics, and of course he always bounces back and regains his fortune and regains Queen Industries and Queen Consolidated or whatever the hell. So I have a feeling that was probably going to be part of where they decide to go next season. Because, okay, what happens with Oliver if he does lose all of his money? Well, he might lose the lease on the Arrow Cave, and how in the world is he going to be able to pay Felicity and Dig? And given what happened there, I guess I assume that Felicity's probably been fired by Isabel also. Bummer. But, yeah, again, it's really, just one emotional gut punch after another. And this even really ties into what happens on the island, where it's Oliver who ultimately kills Ivo to protect Sarah from having to be the one that does that. Now, if it turns out that Ivo really was Felicity's dad, ooh, juicy. I mean, I've never really been that big on the idea that Ivo was Felicity's dad. I think that's just a little too convoluted. But here, I mean, just the whole, so Felicity, funny thing, I personally shot your father to death. Ooh. Oh, that's... Yeah. I'm still not totally down with that, but oh man, is that going to be juicy. And, let's see. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about Oliver this episode. And anyway, so let's move on and talk briefly about our 2 guest stars. You'll forgive me if I don't recall the actors' names. I'm really bad with names if you're one of my regular viewers, especially when it comes to actors. But they're playing Caitlin Frost and Cisco Ramon, who are, of course, characters who are going to be supporting characters over on Grant Gustin's Flash TV show whenever that comes on the air. I'm going to assume probably this fall, maybe... it really can't just sort of stand to reason that they might pair Arrow and Flash together, and then probably maybe put Tomorrow People and the 100 together. Speaking of the 100, I hope you guys have been joining me on Twitter for my live tweets of the 100, because, oh man, I am having so much fun. I don't want to say trashing, but just really pointing out the real lack of logic in that show. And kind of to get off on a tangent here, the 100 is not a badly written show. I mean, and obviously the people who are making it are genuinely trying to tell a good and dramatic story, and for the most part they do at times succeed. The problem is that there is just so much stuff that makes absolutely no logical sense. Okay, well, anyway, not a huge amount to say about what was going on with Cisco and Caitlin here. We only really get a brief sketch of their personalities, and we get to see that, okay, they're people that Felicity has befriended because they're working at Star Labs, and apparently because of his injuries, Barry has been moved there, which, okay, that's all well and good. I did like, of course, that they did when Cisco grabs that. When Cisco and Caitlin grab that crazy gun, and I believe it was Caitlin mentions that it was invented by Arthur Light. Arthur Light, of course, in the comics is the villain Dr. Light, who kind of went from being a joke character to serial rapist. Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of hoping that they don't make him like that. Should they choose to bring that character into the TV show, because yeah, in the comics they really just, I hate to say it, they just took that whole serial rapist thing and ran with it, and it just became so, like, they were trying to use the fact that he was a rapist as in some sort of way for titillation. There was one time I read the comics, the heroes bust in and to catch Dr. Light, and they find him with like these 3 teenage girls that he's taken prisoner and has been abusing, and he's got them dressed up like Starfire, Wonder Girl, and Raven, and it's just absolutely horrible. And I understand why they did it, but it's just like, okay, I get it. This guy is an evil rapist. You don't need to keep banging me in the head with this. Okay, but anyway, basically it just sort of shows that Cisco and Caitlin are, good-hearted, resourceful people, the sort of characters who would stand by a hero like the Flash. But of course, we know that, I know which characters in the comics Caitlin and Cisco are counterparts of. I don't think I'll spoil that for folks out there who might not be familiar, so we'll save that for when it comes time to talk about that. And in case you guys have forgotten, I have promised you that I will review the Flash TV show when it does start. Anyway, so our villains. No Brother Blood this episode. And Slade, man, where he just shows up at the Arrow Cave and beats the hell out of everybody. Oh, man, that was just another absolutely stellar action scene on this show, and it really just serves to remind you that Slade is not somebody these guys can take lightly. Team Arrow is not ready to take this guy down, and if it wasn't for the fact that Slade just wanted to draw it out some more, he could have killed all of them. And again, this just really, really serves to remind everybody that Slade is no joke. Now, this episode we also get confirmation that Isabel is, well, basically now that Isabel has been injected with Mirakuru, it's like I said, basically certain that she's going to become Ravager. In fact, I even think she said specifically that she'd received training in combat from Slade. And apparently, and I never really did bother to read all that much up on who Isabel's counterpart in the comics was, but I did a little bit more checking, and it is confirmed basically that it's what she said. She was Robert Queen's lover, and she came back to get revenge on the Queen family. Now, a lot of people were hoping that she might secretly turn out to be Rose Wilson. Pretty safe to say that's not going to happen, but one has to keep in mind is that Rose Wilson was not the first person to run around and use the name Ravager. So I'm thinking that Isabel, it's not surprising that it wouldn't really surprise me if she got killed off in the season finale. And that sort of leaves the door open for a younger character to take up the mantle of Ravager sometime later on. It'd be interesting, actually, if it turned out that she really wasn't Slade's daughter, and it just someone who happened to also have the last name Wilson. I mean, it's not as if that's not uncommon, but we'll worry about that down the road. And yeah, I kind of think that covers everything. Oh, that I got to talk about in terms of the characters. So let's kind of go through the major plot of things and talk about a few little things. I like how Cisco, and I can't remember if it was Cisco or Caitlin, mentioned that someone called Iris had been visiting Barry a lot. If you're familiar with the Flash mythology, or have just been paying attention to what's going on in terms of casting on the Flash show, you know who Iris is, and she is a very, very, very important person in the Flash mythology. One other thing I noticed, that when they break into the labs to destroy that centrifuge, they beat up the security guards, and I think it was Felicity says that she feels a little bad about it, and Sarah goes, "Well, they're working for our enemy." Well, no, they're actually working for Queen Consolidated, and they're just security guards. They have no idea what's going on in terms of Ravager or Slade, and basically Sarah is sort of taking pleasure in beating up some blue-collar guys who are just doing their jobs. And even though they do make sure to get these guys out of the blast zone, I don't think that the warehouse you were supposed to be guarding got blown up by God knows who is going to do these guys' careers any favors. So Sarah, stop being such an ass about all of that. Let me see. Oh yeah, I did like during that fight with Slade in the cave where Oliver actually pulls out a trick arrow, apparently something with some explosives on it, and nails him with it and knocks him for a loop. That was some really good stuff. And oh yeah, I almost forgot, this is the Flash guest stars episode. So I'm wearing this right here as I do my review. I actually picked this up just the other week. It was on sale for $9 and scored a sweet Green Lantern t-shirt at the same time. So yeah. And let me see. Yeah, guys, I think that covers really everything that I had to say about this episode. Again, we're dealing with getting things in place for the season finale, and I think it's really going to be next week where everything starts to go absolutely bonkers, and I think it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome, and I cannot wait. So until next time, guys, you can of course follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and until next time, take care and have a good one.